Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became a rescue-only hero. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not built for the weak, but it was certainly broken by the strong. Izuku Midoriya learned this truth not in a classroom, but on the streets of Mizurufu. He learned it watching the news feeds on the giant screens at Tatooine Station. He learned it watching the collateral damage reports that scrolled quickly at the bottom of the screen, tiny, insignificant text beneath the glamour shots of Mount Lady gigantifying or Kamui Woods binding a villain. Property damage, 45 million yen. Civilians injured, 12. Casualties 0. That was the number everyone celebrated. But Izuku, 14 years old and cursed with a mind that moved faster than his quirkless feet, knew that 0 casualties was a statistical lie. It didn't account for the people whose livelihoods were crushed under the rubble of a heroic landing. It didn't count the panic attacks, the dust inhalation, the trauma. Most people looked at a hero fight and saw good versus evil. Izuku looked at a hero fight and saw a disaster zone in progress. Midoriya! Stop muttering and pay attention. Izuku snapped his head up, his spine straightening instinctively. The classroom was a sea of black uniforms, and at the front, the teacher held a sheaf of career aptitude forms like a weapon. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your futures, the teacher droned, though the smirk on his face suggested he knew exactly where their futures lay. I would hand out these forms, but I assume you all want to be heroes, the class erupted. Quirks fired off in a chaotic display of pyrotechnics, telekinesis, and body morphing. It was a display of power. A display of potential violence. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving a hand to disperse the smoke. But remember, unlicensed quirk usage is illegal. Settle down. Hey, teach! The voice cracked like a whip, silencing the room. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet on his desk, a predator lounging among prey. Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted D-lister. I'm the real deal, the class grumbled, but Bakugo's palms crackled with small, threatening explosions. The smell of burned sugar, nitroglycerin, wafted through the air. To anyone else, it was the smell of power. To Izuku, it was the smell of a volatile chemical reaction waiting for an ignition source. Ah, Bakugo, the teacher said, checking his list. You're aiming for Yue High, correct? The only place worth my time, Bakugo sneered. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the top hero. I'll write my name on the bedrock of history. Oh, the teacher murmured, his eyes sliding over the list to the name right below Bakugo's. That's right. Midoriya wants to go to Yue too, doesn't he? The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Then, the laughter hit. It wasn't a ripple, it was a wave. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. They'd break him in half. Izuku shrank into his shoulders. He didn't stand up to defend himself. He didn't shout about his dreams. He simply gripped his pen, his eyes scanning the structural layout of the classroom, the distance to the door, 4 meters, the density of the desks, hard plastic, fire-resistant, the blast radius of Bakugo's likely trajectory. Boom! Bakugo's hand slammed onto Izuku's desk, the explosion charring the wood and sending Izuku scrambling backward, his chair clattering to the floor. Deku, Bakugo growled, smoke curling from his fingers. Forget the bad quirk extras. You're worse. You're quirkless. You think you can stand in the same ring as me? I am not trying to compete with you, Kaken. Izuku stammered, his hands raised, not in a guard, but in a placating gesture meant to de-escalate aggressive body language. It's been my dream since I was little. And there's no rule that says I can't try. Try? Bakugo loomed over him, his shadow stretching long. Try to do what? Die. What can you do in a crisis, Deku? You can't punch. You can't shoot. You're a liability. You're just a victim waiting to happen. A victim waiting to happen. The words echoed in Izuku's head long after the school day ended. He walked the familiar path home, clutching his burned notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13, to his chest. Bakugo had scorched it and tossed it out the window, telling him to take a swan dive off the roof. Izuku had retrieved it from the koi pond, fishing it out with a grim sort of patience. He flipped through the damp pages. Unlike most fanboys who sketched costumes and ultimate moves, Izuku's notes were different. Page 44, Empty Lady. Canyon Cannon. Effective against giant villains, but causes massive displacement of air pressure. Shattered windows recorded on 4th and 5th Streets. Recommendation: evacuation radius needs to be tripled before engagement. Page 45, Kamui Woods. Lacquered chain prison. Excellent containment, but highly flammable. Bad matchup against pyrotypes in urban centers. Risk of structural fire high. He didn't analyze how to beat them. He analyzed how to survive them. Bakugo is right, Izuku whispered to the empty underpass. The tunnel was cool and dark, the damp concrete smelling of mold. I can't punch. I can't shoot. He stopped walking. He looked at his hands. They were scarred from years of taking notes, of tripping, of being shoved. They weren't weapons. But does a hero have to be a weapon? A gurgling sound came from the sewer grate behind him. Izuku spun around, his instincts screaming danger. A massive, fluid shape erupted from the manhole cover. It was sludge, dark, viscous, and smelling of rot and sewage. Two manic, bulging eyes floated in the muck, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice wet and distorted. Izuku froze. His mind, usually a storm of calculations, stalled. Don't worry, the villain lunged. I'm just going to take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over. The sludge hit him like a tidal wave. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose. It was suffocating, heavy, and tasted of oil. Can't breathe. Oxygen deprivation. Panic leads to faster heart rate. Faster heart rate leads to faster oxygen consumption. Izuku clawed at the fluid, but his fingers passed right through. It was a non-Newtonian fluid? No, purely liquid. He couldn't grab it. He couldn't punch it. Weakness. Where is the weakness? His vision began to blur. Black spots danced in his eyes. He was going to die here. A statistic. Casualties 1. No. His hand scrabbled against his backpack strap. He couldn't hurt the villain. But he needed air. Suddenly, a clang echoed through the tunnel. The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear. The voice was booming, resonant, a sound that vibrated in Izuku's very bones. For I am here, All Might. The symbol of peace stood at the tunnel entrance, illuminated by the harsh daylight behind him like a god descending. He drew back a fist. Texas. Smash! The air pressure alone was devastating. The wind hit Izuku and the villain like a freight train. The sludge scattered instantly, blown apart by the sheer force of the displacement. Izuku was thrown back, hitting the tunnel wall, but the sludge was gone from his lungs. He gasped, heaving in sweet, precious oxygen. When he opened his eyes, All Might was already gathering the scattered bits of the villain into empty soda bottles. The hero was huge, a mountain of muscle and American-style shading. My apologies, young man. All Might laughed, a boisterous sound that didn't quite match the efficiency of his hands. I got a little lost in the sewer system. But you're safe now. Izuku scrambled up, his legs shaking. All Might. Can I have an autograph? He fumbled for his notebook. It was already signed. Giant, sprawling letters across 2 pages. Thank you? Thank you so much. It'll be a family heirloom. Izuku bowed repeatedly, his forehead nearly hitting the concrete. Think nothing of it. All Might gave a thumbs up, his smile blinding. Now I must get this fellow to the police. Stay out of trouble. He crouched, ready to leap. Wait! Izuku shouted. All Might paused. No time to chat, I'm afraid. I have to ask you something. Izuku took a step forward. The question that had been burning a hole in his soul for 10 years. The question Bakugo had answered with violence. Can I be a hero without a quirk? All Might stopped. The steam coming off his body seemed to increase. I have no powers, Izuku said, his voice trembling but gaining strength. I can't punch through walls. I can't shoot fire. But I want to save people. I want to help. Can someone like me be like you? All Might looked at the boy. He saw the desperation. He saw the shaking knees, and then, poof, the steam exploded. The mountain of muscle vanished. In its place stood a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Izuku screamed. An imposter! I am All Might, the skeleton wheezed, wiping blood from his chin. He sat down heavily on the tunnel railing. The deflated version, anyway. He lifted his shirt, revealing a scar that looked like a spiderweb of mangled purple tissue. It covered half his torso. Izuku gasped, his analytical mind immediately cataloging the damage. Respiratory system compromised. Stomach removed. Extensive scarring suggesting multiple surgeries. 5 years ago, All Might said. A villain did this. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now. 5 years ago? Izuku muttered. Was that toxic chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might said, surprised. But no. This fight wasn't made public. I am the symbol of peace. I cannot be seen to be weak. He looked at Izuku, his eyes hollow and serious. Pros are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without powers. So, can you be a hero without a quirk? All Might looked away. I cannot simply say yes. It's too dangerous. If you want to help people, you could become a police officer. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. The words hit Izuku harder than the sludge villain had. It's too dangerous. It's good to have dreams, young man, All Might said, standing up and grabbing the bottles of sludge. But you have to consider reality. He walked away. He left Izuku standing alone on the roof. Wait, how did they get to the roof? In his desperation, Izuku had grabbed All Might's leg as he jumped. That in itself was a feat of terrifying stupidity and grip strength. Izuku stood there as the wind picked up. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the city. Consider reality. Reality was that men were not created equal. Reality was that without power, you were a liability. Izuku walked down the stairs of the building in a daze. He wandered through the streets, his mind empty for the first time in his life. No analysis. No muttering. Just silence. Then, the explosion happened. It wasn't far. The ground shook. Smoke billowed up, thick and black, choking the sky. Izuku's feet moved before his brain did. It was habit. Hero fight. Go take notes. He arrived at the shopping district to find a scene from hell. Fires raged in the storefronts. The street was slick with water and debris. A crowd had gathered, held back by the police, watching with terrified fascination. And in the center of the inferno, the sludge villain had returned. I dropped him, Izuku whispered, horror gripping his throat. When I grabbed All Might, the bottles fell. This was his fault. The villain had a hostage. A boy with ash-blonde hair, struggling violently, setting off explosions that only fed the fire. Kaken! The heroes were there. Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady. But they were doing nothing. I can't get close. Death Arms shouted, shielding his face. The fire is too intense. My wood will catch fire. Kamui Woods yelled. I can't fit in the alley. Empty Lady cried. They were waiting. Waiting for someone with the right quirk to show up. Waiting for the matchup to be favorable. Meanwhile, Bakugo was suffocating. His eyes, usually filled with arrogance, were wide with primal fear. Izuku watched the heroes. They were strong. They were famous. And they were useless. They're treating it like a battle, Izuku realized. His mind snapped back online, the cogwheels spinning so fast they nearly smoked. They're looking for an opening to attack. But there is no opening. This isn't a fight. It's a biological obstruction. Bakugo's explosions were consuming the oxygen in the immediate vicinity. The sludge was tightening, hypoxia imminent. T-30 seconds before brain damage begins. The police line was just a piece of yellow tape. Izuku didn't think about becoming a hero. He didn't think about All Might's warning. He didn't think about his lack of a quirk. He saw a person dying, and the professionals were letting it happen. Izuku sprinted. Hey! Come back! You'll get yourself killed! A hero shouted. Izuku ignored them. He ducked under the police tape. He didn't run with the flailing desperation he had shown in the tunnel. He ran with his head low, eyes locked on the target. He analyzed the villain as he closed the distance. The sludge was fluid, but it required cohesion to maintain its grip. Bakugo's explosions were creating pockets of heated gas, making the sludge less viscous but more volatile. Don't hit the villain, Izuku told himself. Do not engage the threat. Remove the victim. He reached the fire. The heat was blistering, singeing his eyebrows. The villain saw him. You again! The sludge roared, raising a liquid tentacle to smash him. Izuku didn't stop. He unslung his heavy yellow backpack, filled with textbooks, notebooks, and gym clothes, and swung it. He didn't aim for the villain's eyes. That would just make him flinch and tighten his grip. Izuku aimed for the villain's respiration. Even sludge needed to maintain surface tension. Izuku threw the bag with a calculated spin, slamming it into the fluid mass near where a mouth should be, disrupting the villain's equilibrium. The sludge faltered for a microsecond. Izuku dove. He didn't tackle the villain. He tackled the sludge around Bakugo. Kaken! Izuku screamed, plunging his hands into the muck. Deku! Bakugo gasped, his voice wet. Why are you? Shut up and stop exploding! Izuku yelled, a command so authoritative it shocked even him. You're burning your own oxygen. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's collar with one hand. With the other he didn't punch. He dug his fingers into the sludge and pulled sideways, trying to break the vacuum seal. It was like trying to pull a boot out of deep mud. Let him go! Izuku roared. Get off me, you gnat! The villain recovered, the sludge swirling up to engulf Izuku too. Izuku didn't let go. He braced his legs against the asphalt. He wasn't trying to win. He was acting as a human anchor. If I can create an air pocket, just enough for him to breathe. Izuku pivoted, using his back to shield Bakugo's face from the incoming sludge tendril. He took the hit. The heavy liquid slammed into his shoulder, cracking bone, but he didn't let go. I couldn't just stand there and watch you die. Izuku cried out, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the soot. For a moment, time froze. The heroes watched in stunned silence. A quirkless boy, holding back a monster with nothing but grip strength and physics, using his own body as a shield. Then, a blast of wind dispersed the flames. All Might was there. Not the skeleton, but the Titan. He had forced himself past his limit. I really am pathetic. All Might bellowed, blood spraying from his mouth as he spoke. I told you to consider reality, and yet here I am, watching a quirkless boy teach me what it means to act. All Might grabbed both boys. With his free hand he didn't just punch. He delivered a Detroit smash that was angled upward, creating an updraft so powerful it changed the local weather pressure, turning the sludge into mist and pulling the fire straight up into the sky. Rain began to fall. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and scolding voices. Bakugo was being praised. That quirk is amazing. You held out so long. You're a natural. Izuku was sitting on the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over his shoulders, being chewed out by death arms and Kamui woods. That was reckless. You could have gotten yourself killed. Leave it to the pros. Izuku stared at the ground. He listened to them, but he didn't hear them. He was replaying the scene in his head. I analyzed the situation. I identified the failure of the pros. They were stalled by a lack of offense. I provided a distraction. I secured the airway. But I lacked the strength to extract. Hey! Izuku looked up. Bakugo stood there, looking furious and shaken. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled, his voice cracking. And you didn't save me. I was fine. Don't look down on me, you damn nerd. Bakugo stomped off. Izuku watched him go. He noticed Bakugo was favoring his left side, rib bruising, likely. Midoriya? Izuku turned. All Might stood at the edge of the alleyway, out of sight of the press. He was in his skeletal form again. All Might. Izuku stood up, letting the blanket fall. I'm sorry. I moved without thinking. I know I caused trouble. You did, All Might said seriously. But, he stepped closer, back there. The heroes stood around. I stood around. Only you moved. All Might placed a hand on his chest. Top heroes all have stories about their school days, and most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's eyes widened. Tears began to well up again. That happened to you, didn't it? Izuku fell to his knees. He clutched his chest, sobbing into the asphalt. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice soft but firm. You can become a hero. It was the validation he had wanted all his life. But as Izuku looked up, watching the rain wash away the soot on the pavement, something clicked in his brain. The analytical engine that had been running in the background finally printed its report. He stood up, wiping his eyes. Thank you, All Might, Izuku said. But, not like you. All Might blinked, taken aback. Excuse me? Izuku looked at the skeletal man. He looked at the scar. He looked at the news reports playing in his mind of destroyed buildings and injured civilians. I watched the heroes today, Izuku said, his voice gaining a strange, clinical steadiness. They were waiting for a win condition. They were waiting to fight. And while they waited, Kaken almost died. Izuku clenched his fist. I don't want to be the symbol of peace who stands over a defeated villain, Izuku said, his green eyes burning with a new, distinct fire. I don't want to be the one who punches the hardest. I want to be the reason the death toll is 0. I want to be the one who pulls the victim out of the rubble, while the others are busy posing for the camera. He looked All Might in the eye. You offered me an answer. Now I'm asking for a method. Can you teach me to save people? Not to fight. To save. All Might stared at the boy. He saw the fire. It wasn't the raging inferno of endeavor, nor the bright, blinding sun of his own charisma. It was the steady, unwavering light of a lighthouse in a storm. All Might smiled. It was a genuine, terrifying smile. You're a weird kid, Midoriya. But I think I found a worthy successor. Successor? My quirk, All Might explained, pointing a long, bony finger at Izuku. It can be passed down. It is a torch, passed from one generation to the next. I want you to take it, one for all, Izuku whispered, listening to the explanation. A stockpile of power. Super strength. Speed. But Izuku interjected, his mind already racing. If I take this power, if I use it to punch, I'll shatter. My body isn't built for it. Correct, All Might nodded. Which is why we must train. We have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. The 10 months of hell and physics. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of trash. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, flotsam of society piled high on the sand. This, All Might proclaimed, posing atop a pile of garbage in his buff form, is your first step. You will clean this beach. It will build your vessel to hold one for all. Izuku looked at the beach. Most people would see a mess. Izuku saw a physics problem. If I just lift them, I'll hurt my back, Izuku muttered, pulling out a new notebook, the rescue protocol. And in a real disaster, debris isn't just weight. It's structure. If I pull that fridge, the pile collapses. If there were a victim underneath, they'd be crushed. Exactly. All Might laughed, coughing up a little blood. So? Get to it. The training began. For the first month, Izuku barely cleared anything. He spent hours walking around piles, pushing them, testing their stability. All Might was frustrated initially. Young Midoriya. You need to haul. I am hauling. Izuku grunted, wedged under a rusted sedan. But I'm calculating the fulcrum. If I lift here, the glass shatters outward. Safety hazard. By month 3, Izuku had changed. He wasn't just getting stronger. He was getting efficient. He stopped trying to muscle everything. He used metal pipes as levers. He used ropes and pulleys made from discarded fishing nets to hoist heavy beams. He wasn't training to be a bodybuilder. He was training to be a human forklift. He started studying EMT protocols at night. He memorized the triage color codes: black, deceased; red, immediate; yellow, delayed; green, minor. Red is the priority, Izuku recited while doing push-ups with All Might sitting on his back. Airway obstruction, uncontrolled hemorrhage, tension pneumothorax. Stabilize and evacuate. Good. All Might shouted. But don't forget your glutes. Month 6. The physical transformation was becoming visible. Izuku's arms, once stick-thin, were corded with functional muscle. His legs, however, were the focus. "Why so many squats, young Midoriya?" All Might asked one morning as Izuku did his 500th rep in the sand. "Mobility," Izuku gasped. "If I'm going to be a rescue hero, I need to be faster than the villains. I need to be able to carry a 100-kilogram civilian and parkour up a vertical wall. Punching power is secondary. Leg drive is essential." All Might watched him. He had expected to train a mini All Might. Instead, he was training something else entirely. Something the world hadn't seen before. A hero who viewed One for All not as a cannon, but as an engine. Month 9. Izuku was moving through the trash piles like water. He didn't just lift, he flowed. He would slide under a pile, identify the keystone, brace it with his back, and invite All Might to crawl through the tunnel he created. "Secure!" Izuku would yell, his face red with exertion, holding up a literal truck frame. "Passage clear! Evacuate!" It was impressive. It was terrifying. Finally, the day of the exam arrived. The beach was unrecognizable. The trash was gone. But more than that, the sand had been raked. The shoreline was pristine. Izuku stood at the water's edge, shirtless, screaming at the sunrise. "I did it!" All Might pulled up in his truck. He looked at the boy. Izuku Midoriya was ripped, scarred, and exhausted. But his eyes were clear. "You did incredible work," All Might said, handing him a towel. "You truly are a hero in the making." He plucked a hair from his head. "Now, eat this." Izuku stared at the hair. "That's unsanitary. Just eat it." "We're out of time." Izuku swallowed the hair with a grimace. He waited for the power. He didn't feel anything yet. "It takes time to digest," All Might explained. "Now go. You're going to miss the exam." Izuku grabbed his bag, now organized with a first aid kit, water rations, and a thermal blanket, and ran. The entrance exam, ground beta, UA High. The Fortress of Dreams. Izuku stood at the gate, looking up at the massive glass structure. He felt the familiar anxiety bubbling up, the voice of Bakugo in his head. Deku. He took a step and tripped. Classic, he thought, bracing for the impact. But he didn't hit the ground. He floated. "Are you okay?" A girl with a round face and brown hair smiled at him, her fingers touching his backpack. "It's my quirk. Sorry I used it without asking, but it's bad luck to fall on the first day." She released him, and he landed softly. Thank you," Izuku stammered. "That was... zero gravity? Vestibular disruption risks aside, that's an incredible rescue quirk." "Rescue quirk?" She blinked. "Oh. I guess so. I just want to help my parents' construction company. Anyway, good luck." She ran off. Izuku watched her go. Construction. Debris removal. High value. He walked into the orientation hall. Present Mike, the voice hero, was explaining the rules. 3 types of villains. Mike shouted. 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer. Destroy them to earn points. Izuku frowned. Destroy. The slide showed robots. Combat simulation. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and engines in his cab stood up. May I ask a question? The handout reveals 4 types of villains. If this is a mistake, it is highly shameful for UA. And you, he pointed a stiff finger at Izuku. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here to go on a field trip, leave. Izuku shrank back. Sorry. I was just calculating the structural integrity of the robots based on the silhouette. Okay. Mike waved them down. The 4th villain is a 0-pointer. It's just an obstacle. A gimmick. If you see it, run away. It's not worth any points. Run away, Izuku noted. Standard protocol for civilians. But for heroes, the written exam was a breeze. Izuku had been studying college-level physics to understand leverage. Then came the practical. Izuku stood in front of the massive gates of Battle Center B. He was wearing a green tracksuit. He checked his laces. Double nodded. He looked around. Other examinees were stretching, psyching themselves up. some had support gear. Most looked like they were ready to brawl. Izuku wasn't ready to brawl. He closed his eyes and visualized the flow of one for all. He hadn't used it yet. He didn't know what 100% felt like, but All Might had warned him, your limbs will explode if you aren't careful, so don't use 100%, Izuku thought. Use 5%. Use 1%. Just enough to move. Start. Present Mix's voice blared over the speakers. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Die! The other students hesitated. Izuku didn't. He sprinted. The moment he engaged his legs, he felt it. The hum. One for all wasn't just strength, it was energy. It coursed through his veins like high-voltage electricity. He pushed off the ground. The concrete cracked under his foot. He shot forward like a bullet, leaving the other examinees in the dust. Too fast. Izuku panicked, skidding around a corner. Control it. Imagine the egg in the microwave. Don't let it explode. A one-pointer robot rolled out from an alley. Target acquired. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't punch it. He analyzed the joint mechanism on the robot's wheel. He saw a loose metal pipe on the ground, debris from the simulated city. Izuku grabbed the pipe as he ran past, sliding under the robot's visual sensor. He jammed the pipe into the wheel spoke. Crunch. The robot's momentum worked against it. The wheel locked, the axle snapped, and the robot tipped over, crashing face first into the pavement, disabled. Villain neutralized. Lethal force, none. Energy expenditure, minimal. Izuku kept running. For 10 minutes, the battle center was chaos. Explosions everywhere. Students were blasting robots left and right. 40 points. Someone shouted. 32. Izuku had 0 points. But he was busy. Watch out. Izuku tackled the student, a guy with a laser navel, pushing him out of the way of a falling signpost that a three-pointer had knocked over. Merci! The boy gasped. Clear the area? Izuku commanded, pointing to a safe alley. This street is a kill zone. Izuku moved. He saw a girl trapped by suppressive fire from two two-pointers. He didn't have a shield. He grabbed a discarded car door. With a flare of one for all, green lightning crackling around his skin, he ripped the door off its hinges. He sprinted, sliding in front of the girl, slamming the car door into the ground to act as a barrier. Bullets pinged off the metal. Go! Izuku yelled. The girl scrambled away. Izuku looked at the robots. He vaulted over the car door, jumped off the wall, and landed behind them. He reached into their exposed wiring panels and ripped out the main power cables. The robots powered down. Points, still 0. Izuku panted. This was harder than he thought. The system was rigged for combatants. A pacifist run was suicide. 2 minutes left. The ground began to rumble. Not a rumble. An earthquake. From the central plaza, a shadow eclipsed the sun. The 0-pointer. It was titanic. It was bigger than the buildings around it. As it moved, its massive treads crushed concrete, glass, and steel. It swiped a massive hand, leveling a building. Debris rained down like meteors. Run! It's the 0-pointer. It's huge! The examinees turned and fled. It was the rational response. It was what they were told to do. Izuku turned to run too. His legs were shaking. That's not a villain, his mind screamed. That's a natural disaster given form. Ow! A faint sound. Izuku froze. He looked back toward the dust cloud. Under a pile of rubble, right in the path of the 0-pointer, was the girl with the gravity quirk. Her leg was pinned under a massive slab of concrete. She was trying to lift it, but she was exhausted. The robot loomed over her. The treads were grinding closer. She's going to die. The thought was clinical, cold, and unacceptable. The other students were running away. They were saving themselves. Izuku's body moved. Full calling. Mobility mode. It wasn't a real move name. It was something he made up on the spot. He channeled power into his legs, more than before. The green lightning surged. He launched himself. He didn't jump at the robot. He jumped at the girl. He landed beside her, the impact cracking the pavement. The robot's foot was descending. He had 3 seconds. Can you move? Izuku yelled. My leg, it's stuck! She cried, eyes wide with terror. Izuku looked at the slab. It weighed at least 4 tons. He looked at the robot. He could punch the robot. If he used 100%, he could destroy it. That's what All Might would do. That's what a hero would do. But if I punch the robot, the pieces will fall on her. The shockwave could rupture her eardrums. Collateral damage. No. He wasn't a smashing hero. Izuku grabbed the underside of the concrete slab. Cover your head! Izuku screamed. He gritted his teeth. He channeled one for all. Not into a punch. Into a lift. One for all. 100%. Atlas hold. Power surged through his back, his legs, his arms. He felt his bones creak. He felt the fibers of his muscles tearing. He screamed. With a roar that rivaled the robot's engine, Izuku stood up. The 4-ton slab flew into the air, tossed aside like a piece of cardboard. But the robot was still coming. The foot was descending. Izuku didn't have time to carry her out. He grabbed her, pulling her into his chest. He looked at the descending metal soul, shield. He raised his right arm. He focused everything, every ounce of the power All Might had given him, into his forearm. The robot stepped on them. Boom! Dust billowed out. Silence fell over the testing ground. Time's up! President Mike yelled. The students stopped running. They looked back at the 0-pointer. Its foot was on the ground. Did someone get crushed? Then, a screeching sound of metal on metal. The 0-pointer's foot twitched. It tilted. Underneath the massive tread, a boy was on one knee. His right arm was raised, holding the weight of a god. His sleeve was disintegrated. His arm was purple, broken in a dozen places. His legs were dug deep into the cratered asphalt. But under him, shielded by his body, the girl was safe. Not a scratch. The robot's gears whined as it tried to press down, but Izuku Midoriya did not yield. He was the pillar. He was the shelter. With a final, gasping breath, the power faded. The robot, sensing the exam was over, deactivated and locked its hydraulics, taking the weight off. Izuku collapsed. Midoriya! The gravity girl scrambled out from under him. Oh my God! Your arm! Your legs! Izuku stared up at the sky. He couldn't feel his right arm. He couldn't feel his left leg. He smiled weakly. 0, he whispered, blood trickling from his nose. What? She cried, hovering over him. 0, casualties. Recovery girl arrived moments later, tooting and sighing as she kissed his forehead, her healing quirk accelerating his cell division. Reckless, she muttered. Absolutely reckless. You didn't destroy a single robot, did you? No, Izuku rasped. Well, she said, looking at the stunned faces of the other examinees who had returned to watch. It certainly was something to see. A week later, the letter arrived. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at the holographic projection of All Might. I am here. As a projection, All Might explained the written exam scores, perfect. He explained the villain points, 0. You failed the combat section, young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice grave. Izuku nodded. He expected this. He hadn't fought. But, All Might leaned into the camera. A hero's job is to save people. How could a hero course reject someone who saves others at the risk of their own life? A video played. It was the gravity girl, Uraraka, pleading with President Mike to give Izuku some of her points. He saved me, she said in the video. He didn't attack the robot. He shielded me. You didn't act for points, young Midoriya. All Might's voice swelled with pride. You acted because it was the right thing to do. And that triggers the secret criteria of the entrance exam. The scoreboard appeared. Villain points 0, rescue points 60, 60 rescue points. All Might shouted. A spectacular score! The highest in years. Izuku wept. He covered his mouth, his shoulders shaking. Come, Izuku Midoriya. All Might extended a hand. This is your Hero Academia. He had done it. He hadn't thrown a single punch. He hadn't defeated a single enemy. He had saved someone. And that was enough. The first responder had arrived. The gates of UA High's battle center B were towering, in different slabs of steel that seemed to separate the mortal world from the realm of gods. To the hundreds of examinees gathering in the shadow of the wall, they were the threshold of destiny. To Izuku Midoriya, they were a structural marvel of reinforced alloy, likely capable of withstanding a direct impact from a mid-tier kinetic quirk, but susceptible to thermal expansion if heated rapidly. He shook his head, the green curls bouncing, trying to dislodge the stream of analytical data that constantly flooded his brain. Focus, Izuku. Breathe. He stood near the back of the crowd, adjusting the straps of his yellow backpack. It wasn't the standard-issue school bag. It was a heavy-duty hiking pack he had bought at a surplus store with his allowance. It was filled not with snacks or Lucky Charms, but with rolls of gauze, thermal blankets, a collapsible crowbar, 3 bottles of saline solution, and a canister of fast-acting fire suppressant foam. You look like you're going camping, a boy with a spiky red haircut, Kirishima, if Izuku recalled the roll call correctly, remarked, glancing at him. You know we're supposed to be smashing robots, right? Izuku offered a nervous, wobbly smile. Oh, yes. I know. But well, in a disaster zone, resources are usually the first thing to run out. I thought, better safe than sorry? Kirishima blinked then grinned, revealing shark-like teeth. Manly. Being prepared is definitely manly. Good luck out there, camper. Good luck, Izuku whispered as Kirishima moved away to stretch his arms, his skin hardening into rock. Izuku looked down at his own hands. They were taped up, his fingers reinforced with athletic strapping. He could feel the hum of one for all deep in his gut, a dormant star waiting to go supernova. He hadn't tested it yet. Not really. All Might had warned him that his body was a vessel, but a vessel could still crack if the pressure was too high. Don't punch, he reminded himself. Punching is the last resort. Punching is failure. If you have to punch, you've already lost control of the situation. And start. The voice of President Mike exploded from the speakers atop the observation tower, screeching with enough decibels to rattle teeth. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Die! The crowd hesitated for a fraction of a second, the collective processing lag of the human brain. But Izuku's brain didn't lag. His brain was already running simulations. Scenario: urban combat. Objective: accumulate points via neutralization. Variables: unknown enemy density, civilian presence, none, environmental hazards, high. While the others were still processing the command, Izuku moved. One for all, full cowling. 2%. He didn't scream it. He whispered it, a command code to his own nervous system. Green lightning, faint and crackling, sparked around his legs. He didn't feel pain. He felt lightness. He launched himself forward. He didn't run like a sprinter on a track. He ran like water flowing over stones. He vaulted over the head of a startled examinee, kicked off the side of the gate, and shot into the simulated city before anyone else had crossed the threshold. Whoa! That guy's fast! Someone yelled from behind. Izuku ignored them. He was in the zone. The city was a perfect replica of an urban center, eerie in its silence. Target acquired. A one-pointer. It rolled out of an alleyway on a single tread, its mechanical eye glowing red. Target located. Exterminate. Izuku slid to a halt. His instinct, the instinct ingrained by a decade of watching All Might clips, screamed at him to smash it, to pull back his fist and deliver a Texas smash that would turn the metal into scrap. But he saw something else. He saw the hydraulic tubing exposed near the wheel axle. He saw the delicate sensor array on its neck. If I smash it, shrapnel flies. Shrapnel hits windows. Glass falls. Potential injury to followers. Izuku didn't wind up a punch. He reached into his belt and pulled out the collapsible crowbar. He snapped it open with a flick of his wrist. The robot lunged, a clumsy, mechanical strike. Izuku sidestepped it with terrifying ease, the 2% power boost making the world seem to move in slow motion. As the robot extended its arm, exposing its flank, Izuku jammed the crowbar into the gap between the tread and the chassis. Leverage. Fulcrum. Force. He didn't need super strength for this. He just needed physics. He yanked the bar downward. Crunch. The tread derailed. The robot's engine whined as the gears ground against the misplaced track. It spun wildly, lost its balance, and tipped over, crashing into the asphalt with a metallic thud. Its eye flickered and went dark as the impact jarred its battery connection. Izuku retrieved his crowbar. One down, he breathed. Behind him, the horde of students finally caught up. Explosions erupted. A boy with a laser navel blasted a robot into smithereens. A girl with acid melting through the casing of another. "Did you see that green guy?" One student yelled, blasting a two-pointer. "He just tripped it. Doesn't count if you don't destroy it," another shouted. Izuku frowned as he ran deeper into the city. Did it count? The prompt was to disable the villains. Destruction was implied, not mandated. But he couldn't worry about the score. He had a philosophy to test. Observation room. High above the chaos, in a darkened room lit only by the glow of dozens of monitors, the faculty of UA High sat in judgment. "This year's batch is spirited," Midnight commented, licking her lips as she watched a particularly explosive display from a boy with ash blonde hair on screen 4. "That Bakugo kid is a beast. He's pure instinct. Efficiency is key," Cementos rumbled. "It's not just about power. It's about how much endurance they have." Speaking of efficiency, a small, chimera-like creature sat in the center chair, sipping tea. Principal Niza pointed a paw at screen 7. "Have you noticed Examinee 2234? All Might, sitting in the back in his deflated form, leaned forward. He had been watching screen 7 intently, his heart pounding against his ribs. "Midoriya," All Might whispered. On the screen, Izuku was moving through a chaotic intersection. 3 3-pointers, the heavy assault units, were suppressing a group of students with rubber bullets. The students were pinned down behind a concrete planter. "He has no quirk registration for projectile generation," Aizawa, the eraser hero, noted, his eyes narrowed. "And yet, he's charging a firing line." On screen, Izuku didn't attack the robots. He ran up the side of a building, using the windowsills as steps. He reached the second floor, directly above the robots. "What is he doing?" President Mike asked. Izuku jumped. He didn't land on the robots. He landed behind them. He grabbed a fire hydrant on the street corner. "He's not strong enough to rip that out," Vlad King scoffed. "Even with a strength enhancer." But Izuku didn't rip it out. He kicked the valve cap off with a precision strike, then used his crowbar to torque the valve nut open. A high-pressure jet of water exploded from the hydrant. Izuku didn't just let it spray. He used a piece of sheet metal he'd scavenged to direct the stream. He aimed the water jet directly into the intake fans of the 3-pointers. The robots were waterproof, largely. But the sheer pressure of the municipal water supply, directed into their cooling vents, caused the fans to shatter. Overheating warnings flashed. The robots stalled, their systems rebooting to prevent thermal damage. The students behind the planter popped up and blasted the stalled robots, claiming the points. "He set them up," Nizu chuckled, his tail twitching with delight. He neutralized the threat, allowed his allies to secure the kill, and conserved his own energy. He received 0 points for that assist, technically. But functionally? He won the skirmish. "He's avoiding combat," Aizawa muttered, his expression unreadable. "Is he a pacifist? Or a coward?" "Watch closely, Aizawa," All Might said softly. "Look at where his eyes are." Ground beta 15 minutes in. The city was a war zone. The air smelled of ozone, burnt rubber, and dust. Izuku was panting, but not from exhaustion. From stress. "This is bad," he thought, scanning the street. "This is really bad." The exam was designed to test combat ability, but it had turned into a frenzy. Students were getting sloppy. In their rush to get points, they were ignoring their surroundings. "Hey! Watch it!" Izuku spun around. A student with razor-sharp wings was diving at a 2-pointer. He sliced the robot in half. The top half of the robot, weighing easily 200 pounds, fell backward, straight toward a girl who was reloading a support item. She didn't see it. "Move!" Izuku dropped his crowbar. He channeled 5% into his legs. The backlash stung, a sharp warning from his bones, but he ignored it. He blurred across the asphalt. He didn't have time to push her. He tackled her, wrapping his arms around her head and torso, curling his body into a ball. Protective shell. Hardened muscles. Bracing impact. The robot torso slammed into Izuku's back. Crack. Gah! Izuku grunted, the air forced from his lungs. The weight drove him into the pavement, scraping his chin raw. What? The girl scrambled out from under him. She looked at the smashed robot part, then at Izuku, who was groaning as he pushed the metal off his bruised back. You saved me? Izuku stumbled up, checking his range of motion. Nothing broken. Just a severe contusion on the trapezius. Are you injured? Check your extremities. Any dizziness? I'm fine, she stammered. But that robot, you didn't get any points for that. You're not dead, Izuku said, picking up his crowbar. That's worth more than points. He didn't wait for a thank you. He ran. As the minutes ticked by, Izuku Midoriya became a phantom of the battlefield. He wasn't hunting villains. He was hunting accidents. He saw a boy with a tail get cornered by 3 one-pointers. Izuku didn't fight them. He threw a canister of his fire-suppressant foam at the robot's optical sensors, blinding them instantly. The boy with the tail finished them off. He saw a girl with vines for hair get her leg caught in some rubble. Izuku was there in seconds. He didn't just pull her, he assessed the pile. Don't pull, he ordered her. It's a shifting load. If you pull, that beam falls on your chest. He wedged his body under the beam, channeling the power of one for all into a static hold. Okay, now. Crawl out. Fast. She scrambled free. He dropped the beam. Thank you? She cried. Go. Get to the open plaza. It's safer. Izuku pointed. He was racking up a tally that the scoreboard couldn't see. Splints applied 3, evacuations performed 7, kill assists 12, villain points 0. Izuku checked his watch. 2 minutes left. Panic began to set in. I have 0 points. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail, and All Might will be disappointed, and I'll have wasted this power. He stood in the middle of a decimated intersection. Smoke rose in pillars around him. He felt small. He felt powerless, despite the lightning in his veins. Maybe Aizawa-sensei, from the articles, was right, he thought bitterly. You can't save anyone if you don't win. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was a convulsion. The asphalt rippled like a carpet. What the? From the end of the main thoroughfare, a shadow swallowed the street. It was the 0-pointer. Izuku's jaw dropped. The scale of it was impossible. It wasn't a robot, it was a moving skyscraper. It had to be 20 stories tall. Its treads were the size of houses. That's not a gimmick, Izuku whispered. That's a catastrophe. The other students froze. The ambition, the drive, the hunger for points, it all evaporated, replaced by the primal, lizard brain instinct to survive. Run! It's the 0-pointer! Get out of here! The stampede began. Students turned and fled, pushing past each other, screaming. It was pure chaos. Izuku turned to run. It was the logical choice. President Mike had said it, it's not worth any points. Run away. He took a step back. Ow! The sound was faint, buried under the roar of the robot's massive engine and the screaming crowd. But Izuku's ears, tuned to the frequency of distress, picked it up. He stopped. He looked back. The 0-pointer had punched a building as it emerged. Debris had rained down on the street. Lying in the middle of the road, caught in the trap of the falling masonry, was the brunette girl from the entrance gates. Uraraka. Her leg was pinned under a slab of concrete that must have weighed 4 tons. She was clawing at the ground, trying to activate her quirk, but she was exhausted, nauseous from overuse. The 0-pointer was looming. It wasn't targeting her specifically, it was just moving. Like a hurricane doesn't target a house. It just destroys it because it's in the way. The massive metal foot, wide enough to crush a tank, was lifting. It was going to come down right where she was trapped. Izuku looked at the fleeing students. Even Ida, the guy who had scolded him for muttering, was running away, though he glanced back, hesitating. She's going to die. The thought hit Izuku with the force of a bullet. Casualty report, 1 female. Status, critical. Cause, blunt force trauma. The analysis stopped. The fear stopped. The worry about points stopped. Izuku Midoriya didn't think. One for all! He screamed the name of the power inside him. He grabbed the straps of his backpack and cinched them tight. He ignited the engine. Not 2%. Not 5%. He needed torque. He needed velocity. 10%. The pain was immediate. His muscles screamed as the fibers tore slightly under the strain, but he launched himself off the starting block. He was a green blur cutting against the tide of fleeing students. Speed calculation, 50 meters to target. Robot descent velocity, 4 meters per second. I have 3 seconds. He reached Uraraka. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears and terror. Run! She choked out. Izuku ignored her. He looked at the slab. Option A, punch the robot. Simulation, a smash at 100% would destroy the robot. Consequence, the wind pressure would shatter the glass of the surrounding buildings. The falling robot parts would create a secondary impact zone. The shockwave at this range would rupture Uraraka's internal organs. Result, villain defeated. Victim dead. Option B, remove the victim. Simulation, lift the slab. Consequence, it takes too long. The robot steps on us both before I can drag her out. Result, double casualty. Option C, become the structure. Izuku planted his feet. He stood directly over Uraraka, straddling her prone form. He looked up at the descending foot of the god machine. It was like the sky was falling, a grid of steel treads, ready to grind them into dust. Close your eyes. Izuku screamed. He didn't wind up a punch. He raised both hands, palms open, facing the sky. He bent his knees, dropping into a deep squat. He channeled everything. He reached into the stockpile of power that All Might had cultivated for 40 years. He grabbed the embers of 8 previous heroes. I don't need to win. I just need to hold the line. Detroit. Shield. The robot's foot made contact. Boom. The sound was deafening. A shockwave of dust and displaced air blasted outward, knocking the nearby fleeing students off their feet. Ida skidded to a stop, looking back in horror. He was crushed. The dust hung in the air, thick and gray. The zero-pointer's engine whined, the gears grinding as it tried to complete its step. But it couldn't. Something was stopping it. Slowly, the dust began to clear. In the center of a crater, the asphalt shattered in a spiderweb pattern for 20 feet, stood Izuku Midoriya. He was shaking. His uniform sleeves had disintegrated. His arms were a violent shade of purple and red, the skin crying out in protest. Blood streamed from his nose. His legs were buried to the shins in the concrete, but his arms were locked above his head. His palms were pressed against the massive soul of the robot. He was holding it. He was holding 1,000 tons of hydraulic pressure. Gray-ah-wah! Izuku screamed, a primal, guttural sound. Every bone in his body felt like it was being put through a grinder. The power of One for All surged through him, acting as a hydraulic reinforcement for his skeleton. Underneath him, shielded by the arch of his body, Uraraka stared up, her mouth ageti. She saw the metal death inches from her face. She saw the boy trembling, his sweat and blood dripping onto the pavement beside her. Move! Izuku forced the word out through gritted teeth. I can't hold it forever. Uraraka snapped out of her trance. She realized that Izuku wasn't just lifting the robot, he was becoming the shelter. She twisted her body, ignoring the pain in her ankle. She reached out and touched the concrete slab pinning her leg. Release! The slab floated. She scrambled backward, dragging herself out from under Izuku's shadow. I'm clear! She screamed. I'm clear! Izuku heard her. The relief washed over him, and with it, the adrenaline wavered. The robot pressed down harder. Izuku's arms buckled. No. Not yet. Getting her out isn't enough. I have to get me out too, or the casualty count is 1. He looked at the robot's soul. He couldn't push it up. It was too heavy. But he could redirect it. He remembered his judo training. When the opponent pushes, you pull. When they are heavy, you unbalance them. Izuku released his left hand, throwing all the burden onto his shattering right arm. He screamed in agony as the radius and ulna snapped, but the shift in support caused the robot's foot to tilt. With a final burst of 100% power in his legs, Izuku didn't jump up. He jumped sideways. He launched himself out from under the foot, rolling across the pavement like a ragdoll. Clang! The robot's foot slammed into the ground where he had been standing a millisecond before, crushing the earth with enough force to trigger car alarms 3 blocks away. Izuku tumbled to a stop near Uraraka. He lay on his back, staring at the sky. His right arm was twisted at a sickening angle. His legs felt like jelly. The zero-pointer, sensing no resistance, began to lift its foot again. Time's you up! President Mick's siren wailed across the city. The robots all powered down instantly. The zero-pointer froze mid-step, its red eyes dimming. Silence descended on Battle Center B. It was heavy, thick silence. Slowly, the other students began to creep back. They formed a circle around the crater. They looked at the massive footprint. They looked at the boy lying in the wreckage. Did you see that? Someone whispered. He caught it. He literally caught the robot. Is he dead? Izuku coughed, a cloud of dust puffing from his lips. Is everyone okay? Uraraka crawled over to him, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. You idiot! You crazy idiot! You destroyed your arm. But... Izuku turned his head, wincing. 0 casualties, right? Observation room. The room was silent. Aizawa stared at the screen. He rewound the footage. He played it back frame by frame. He didn't attack, Aizawa said, his voice low. He had the power to destroy that robot. Judging by the energy output required to hold it, he could have blown it apart. But he chose to catch it. He prioritized the safety of the hostage over the neutralization of the threat, Nisa said, his eyes gleaming. If he had punched it, the girl might have been hit by debris. He calculated the risk and chose the harder path. The path of pain. All Might was gripping the armrests of his chair so hard the metal warped. He was crying. Silent, manly tears flowed down his gaunt cheeks. You did it, Izuku. You showed them. You showed them the essence of a hero. So, Midnight tapped her chin. He has 0 villain points. By the standard metric, he fails. But by the rescue metric, Nisa tapped a button on his console, he just set a school record. The aftermath. Make way! Make way! A small, elderly woman in a nurse's outfit hobbled through the crowd, using a syringe like a cane. Recovery girl. She reached Izuku and sighed, shaking her head. Good grief. It's the same every year. Always one who tries to play Atlas. She knelt beside him. Does it hurt? Only when I exist, Izuku wheezed. Well, this will fix the bones, but it will drain your stamina. You're going to be exhausted. She puckered her lips and kissed his forehead. Smooch. Green light enveloped Izuku. His arm snapped back into place with a grotesque series of clicks. His skin knit together. The pain vanished, replaced by a wave of fatigue so heavy it felt like he was sinking into the earth. Sleep now, Sonny, she said softly. Izuku's eyes fluttered. As darkness took him, his last thought was a sinking realization. I didn't destroy a single robot. I failed. 1 week later, the apartment was quiet. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at a fish for dinner. He hadn't spoken much since the exam. He had spent the week lifting weights, but with a grim desperation. He was already preparing for the next step, general education, or maybe a vocational school for paramedics. Izuku? His mother, Inko, called from the door. A letter came. From Yue. Izuku froze. He took the envelope. It was heavy. He walked to his room. He sat at his desk. He took a breath. Just ripped the band-aid off. He tore the envelope open. A metal disc slid out and clattered onto the desk. BZZZT. A hologram projected into the air. I am here. All Might filled the room, or at least the projection did. He was in a yellow suit, posing dramatically. All Might? Izuku whispered. Wait, is this why I haven't heard from you all week? Young Midoriya. The recording boomed. You are looking at the newest faculty member of Yue High, Izuku gasped. You're teaching there? Yes. Now down to business. The written exam. You passed with flying colors. But the practical, the practical. Izuku looked down. I know. You scored 0 villain points. All Might shouted. A terrible score. Unheard of. Izuku flinched. However, All Might leaned in. A hero is not judged solely by their ability to destroy. A hero is judged by their ability to protect. To save, the hologram shifted. A video played. It was Uraraka, standing in the UA office. Please, she was bowing to present Mike. Can you give him some of my points? He saved me. He jumped in when everyone else ran. I would have been crushed if not for him. At least let him pass. Izuku's eyes widened. Tears began to well up. You didn't act for points, young Midoriya. All Might's voice softened. You acted because your body moved on its own. Because you couldn't bear to see someone hurt. The screen changed again. A scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya. Villain points 0. Rescue points 60. 60 rescue points. All Might bellowed. The judges were watching. Every jammed gear. Every tourniquet applied. Every student you pushed out of harm's way. And that final stand. Magnificent. The number 60 glowed gold. You pass, Izuku Midoriya. You pass with the highest rescue score since me. All Might extended a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. And you have proven that you don't need to break others to be strong. You just need to be the shield that doesn't break, Izuku sobbed. He cried until he couldn't breathe, clutching the edge of his desk. He hadn't failed. His philosophy hadn't failed. The rescue hero was born. The classroom of Class 1A was less a place of learning and more a pressure cooker of potential energy. Izuku Midoriya sat at his desk, his posture rigid. He was vibrating. Not from the humming power of one for all curled tightly in his gut, but from the sheer, overwhelming reality that he was here. Yue High, the summit of the hero world. He glanced around the room. It was a kaleidoscope of quirks. There was the boy with engines in his legs, Tenya Ida, the one who had scolded him. There was the girl who could freeze air, Tsuyu Ajiri. No, she was the frog girl. The ice user was Todoroki, the quiet boy in the back with the heterochromatic eyes. And there was Uraraka, beaming at him from across the aisle. And then, there was the empty desk directly in front of him. Bakugo's desk. Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet up, a scowl etched so deeply into his face it looked painful. He hadn't spoken to Izuku since the exam results came out. The silence was worse than the explosions. It was the calm before a catastrophic structural failure. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice was dry, tired, and came from the floor. The class froze. Slowly, they looked toward the podium. A yellow sleeping bag, looking like a discarded chrysalis, was lying there. A zipper lowered, revealing a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the pre-quirk era. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair a mess of black tangles. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man muttered, climbing out of the bag and sipping a pouch of jelly drink. Time is a finite resource. You lot are irrational. He stood up, his gaze sweeping over them with the warmth of a coroner examining a particularly messy crime scene. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me on the P grounds. He held up a blue gym uniform. P grounds? Uraraka whispered as they scrambled to grab the uniforms. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Aizawa didn't turn back. UA is a freestyle school. That means I run my class how I see fit. And right now, I see a lot of children who don't know the difference between a hero and a liability. The P grounds. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the kind of weather that usually preceded major disaster drills in Izuku's experience. The class stood in a loose semicircle, looking confused. A quirk apprehension test, Aizawa announced, holding a digital tablet. But we did those in middle school, Kirishima protested. We aren't allowed to use our quirks during physical fitness tests. The government says it's to maintain fairness. The government, Aizawa drawled, is run by bureaucrats who think equality means hamstringing the strong. Here, we don't care about fairness. We care about survival. The Villain Alliance doesn't care if you can do a seated toe touch without your quirk. They care if you can outrun a collapsing building. He turned his dark eyes onto Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw record in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He picked up the ball. A savage grin split his face. He wound up, his body coiling like a spring. Die fire! Boom! An explosion of fire and shockwaves erupted from his palm. The ball vanished, a streak of white heat tearing through the sky. Die! Izuku muttered, scribbling mentally. Aggressive verbalization to augment psychological readiness. Interesting. Aizawa held up the tablet. 705.2 meters. The class gasped. 700 meters? That's insane. This looks like fun. A pink-skinned girl, Ashido, cheered. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Fun? He repeated softly. You have 3 years to become the guardians of society. You think you can spend that time having fun? Fine, he grinned. It was a wide, terrifying expression that didn't reach his eyes. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have 0 potential and will be instantly expelled. The silence was absolute. Expelled? Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters are unreasonable, Aizawa countered, his voice sharp. Mass murder is unreasonable. Rogue villains are unreasonable. Heroes are the ones who overturn the unreasonable. If you want to hang out at a burger joint, go to a vocational school. He looked directly at Izuku. Midoriya. Izuku straightened. You scored 0 villain points in the exam. You got in on a technicality of rescue points. But in the field, you can't save anyone if you're dead. Let's see if you belong here. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Izuku stood at the starting line next to Tenya Ida. Ida was revving his engines. Blue exhaust, Izuku noted. High-octane efficiency. He's built for linear speed. Izuku took a breath. He couldn't use 100%. If he broke his legs now, he failed. He needed to use the full cowling concept he had stumbled upon during the robot incident, spreading the power like a thin film over his muscles, rather than a concentrated explosive charge. 2%. Just enough to lubricate the joints. Just enough to push off. Start. Ida was a blur. Vroom. He crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. Izuku launched. Green sparks flickered around his shoes. He didn't run with the long strides of a sprinter. He ran low to the ground, his center of gravity dropped, his arms pumping in a tight, controlled rhythm, the evac dash he had practiced for carrying weight. He crossed the line. 5.5 seconds, the robot announced. It wasn't superhuman like Ida, but it was drastically faster than his middle school average of 7.1. He's fast, Uraraka noted. Not flashy, but stable. Aizawa watched the tablet. He's holding back. Or he's terrified of his own power. Test 2, grip strength. Shoji, a student with multiple arms, gripped the device. 540 kilograms. Izuku took the device. He squeezed. Don't crush it. Don't break the sensor. Apply pressure evenly. The machine beeped. 60 kilograms. Izuku frowned. He had tried to pulse one for all into his hand, but the fear of shattering the expensive equipment made him hesitate. It was barely above average. What are you doing, Deku? Bakugo sneered from the sidelines. Afraid you'll break a nail? Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku cleared the sandbox entirely, using a 3% burst to propel himself like a grasshopper. He landed in a crouch, absorbing the impact silently. Structural landing, he thought. Minimize sound. Minimize shock to the ankles. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta, the small great boy, was a blur of bouncing balls. Izuku used his parkour training, moving rhythmically, but he couldn't match the specialized quirks. The pivot point, ball throw. The sun was high in the sky. The class was sweating. Izuku looked at the scoreboard in his head. He was doing okay. Not great. Mid-pack. But Aizawa wasn't looking for mid-pack. Midoriya, Aizawa called. You're up. Izuku walked to the circle. He picked up the softball. It felt heavy. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher's eyes were locked on him. You're holding back, Aizawa stated flatly. I'm being careful, Izuku corrected. You're hesitating, Aizawa said. I watched the footage of the entrance exam. You saved the girl, yes. But you broke yourself to do it. You have a powerful quirk, but you treat it like a bomb you're afraid to detonate. If you break your arm throwing a softball, you're useless to me. Izuku looked at the ball. He wants me to use it. He wants to see power. Izuku gripped the ball. He could do it. He could channel 100% into his fingertip, blast the ball into the stratosphere, and sacrifice a finger. It would prove he had power. It would get him a high score. He wound up. Power surged into his arm. The red veins of One for All glowed under his skin. Smash! He threw his arm forward. The ball flew, about 40 meters. Izuku blinked. The power had vanished right at the release point. His arm felt heavy, sluggish. He looked at Aizawa. Aizawa's hair was floating. The scarf around his neck seemed to writhe like a living thing. His eyes glowed a piercing red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said. Erased? Izuku gasped. He quickly catalogued the data. Goggles to hide line of sight. Hair stands up. Static charge secondary effect? Eraser head. The underground hero. Your eraser head. From what I can tell, Aizawa walked closer, invading Izuku's personal space. You can't control your power. You have two settings, 0 and 100. If you use 100 you break. If you break, you become a liability. Someone else has to save you. Aizawa's capture tape lashed out, wrapping around Izuku, pulling him close. There is an old saying. He who chases two rabbits catches either. You want to be a hero who saves? But you can't even save your own bones. You are irrational. You have zero potential. He blinked. His hair fell. I've returned your quirk. You have one throw left. Hurry up and get it over with so I can expel you. Izuku stood there, the tape loosening, the words stung. Zero potential. Liability. He looked at his hand. It was shaking. He thinks I'm trying to be All Might, Izuku realized. He thinks I'm trying to be a puncher who can handle the recoil. He thinks I'm a broken cannon. Izuku closed his eyes. No. I'm not a cannon. I'm a winch. I'm a jack. I'm a shield. Aizawa turned to walk away, expecting the boy to either give up or break his arm in a futile attempt at glory. Teacher, Izuku said. Aizawa stopped. You said I can't save anyone if I'm broken. You're right. Izuku stepped back into the circle. He didn't take the stance of a pitcher. He stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent. He held the ball with both hands close to his chest. But you also said I have to defeat the threat. Izuku looked up. Not at the horizon. But straight up. 90 degrees. I disagree. Aizawa frowned. What? The threat isn't always a villain, Izuku said, his voice gaining that strange, muttered cadence he used when analyzing. Sometimes the threat is gravity. Sometimes it's time. Izuku didn't channel the power into his arm. He channeled it into his legs and his shoulders. Full cowling. 5%. Vertical clear. He threw the ball. Not forward, straight up. The ball shot into the sky like a mortar round. It went high, impossibly high. It disappeared into the glare of the sun. The class stared. He threw it the wrong way, Kaminari pointed out. Is he giving up? Izuku didn't move. He stood in the circle, staring at the sky. He was counting. Velocity approximately 300 meters per second. Deceleration due to gravity 9.8 m/s². Apex height. He waited. Midoriya, step out of the. Aizawa started. Wait, Izuku snapped. A few seconds later, a speck appeared in the sky. The ball was coming back down. It was falling at terminal velocity. It was a bullet. Izuku didn't dodge. He stepped directly under it. Is he crazy? Uraraka screamed. It'll kill him. Izuku watched the ball. To him, it wasn't a ball. It was a falling piece of debris. It was a person falling from a burning building. He raised his hands. He activated One for All again, not to push, but to cushion. He timed it perfectly. As the ball reached him, his hands moved with it, matching its speed for a split second to negate the impact energy, turning a lethal collision into a soft catch. Thwack. Izuku stood there, the ball smoking slightly in his hands. He hadn't moved an inch from his spot. He lowered his hands and looked at Aizawa. Distance, 0 meters, Izuku said calmly. But if that ball was a falling child, they would be alive. Silence. You asked for a display of potential, Izuku continued, his voice trembling slightly but his gaze firm. My potential isn't in how far I can throw a threat away. It's in how safely I can bring it down. I don't want to be the hero who defeats the villain and leaves a graveyard behind. I want to be the hero who handles the gravity while you handle the punching. He placed the ball gently on the ground. I am the first responder. That is my logic. Aizawa stared at him. The dry eye sensation was itching, but he didn't blink. He looked at the boy's uninjured arms. He looked at the perfect stillness of his catch. Aizawa grinned again. This time, it wasn't terrifying. It was interested. Distance, 0, Aizawa announced to the class. But technique, infinite. He cleared the scoreboard. Next test. Bakugo stared at Izuku, his mouth slightly open. He didn't throw it? He caught it? What the hell kind of quirk use is that? The locker room. The atmosphere was electric after the tests. No one had been expelled. Aizawa claimed it was a logical ruse, though he kept eyeing Izuku with a strange thoughtfulness. That was amazing, Midoriya. Ida chopped his hand in the air. Unorthodox. Completely against the spirit of the softball throw. But highly effective as a demonstration of control. Yeah, man. Kirishima slapped Izuku's back. You stood up to Aizawa-sensei. That was manly. Izuku blushed, muttering about physics equations. He opened his locker. Inside hung his hero costume. It wasn't the skin-tight bodysuit most of the others had. He had sent in very specific designs. He pulled out the jumpsuit. It was teal and black, the colors of paramedic scrubs and heavy-duty tactical gear. The material was thick, reinforced with Kevlar weave. The boots were heavy, with steel toes and shock-absorbent soles for parkour. The gloves were thick, rubberized for insulation against electricity and heat. And the belt was a utility nightmare. Pouches upon pouches. Whoa, Mineta gawked. You look like a walking hardware store. It's practical, Izuku said, pulling on the heavy rescue loader gauntlets. They weren't for punching. They were skeletal frames that reinforced his grip strength and wrist stability, designed to prevent his bones from snapping when lifting heavy loads. He pulled on the helmet, a sturdy crash helmet with a reinforced visor and a built-in respirator. He looked in the mirror. He didn't look like All Might. He didn't look like a symbol of peace. He looked like a firefighter who had walked through hell. Battle trial. I am here. All Might burst through the door in his Silver Age costume. Coming through the door like a hero, the class cheered. Izuku smiled behind his respirator. Combat training. All Might announced. You've got the quirks, you've got the costumes. Now let's see what you can do. They marched to ground beta. The scenario. All Might pulled out a script. Villains are hiding a nuclear weapon in the hideout. Heroes must secure it. Villains must protect it or capture the heroes. He drew lots. Team A, Midoriya and Uraraka, heroes. Team D, Bakugo and Ida, villains. Izuku froze. Of course. He looked across the room. Bakugo was staring at him. He was wearing giant grenade gauntlets. His eyes were murderous. This is it, Bakugo mouthed. The planning phase. Izuku and Uraraka stood outside the building. So, Uraraka said, adjusting her pink suit. We're up against Bakugo. He's scary. He's not just scary, Izuku said, tapping the side of his helmet to activate the comms. He's brilliant. He has incredible combat instincts. And Ida? Ida is fast and diligent. He'll likely fortify the objective. What's the plan? Uraraka asked. Do we fight them? No, Izuku said instantly. Negative. Engaging Bakugo is a trap. He wants a fight. If we give him a fight, he dictates the pace. He's the superior combatant. So, we are rescue heroes, Izuku said, checking his pouches. Our objective is the weapon. To us, the weapon is a victim that needs extraction. Bakugo is a hazardous environmental factor, like a fire or a gas leak. He pulled out a roll of heavy-duty capture tape. We don't put out the fire if we don't have to, Izuku said, his eyes narrowing behind the visor. We work around it. The trial begins. Start. Izuku and Uraraka entered through a second-story window. Izuku moved silently, his heavy boots surprisingly quiet. Full cowling 2%, he whispered. The green sparks danced. They moved down the hallway. Checkpoint. Deku! The scream came from around the corner. An explosion blasted the wall apart. Bakugo lunged out of the smoke, his right gauntlet swinging for Izuku's head. I found you! Izuku didn't block. He didn't counterattack. He dropped. He collapsed his knees, sliding under Bakugo's swing. As he slid, he reached into a pouch. Uraraka, go! Izuku yelled. But, go! Find the weapon! I'll contain the hazard. Uraraka hesitated, then ran. Bakugo ignored her. His eyes were locked on Izuku. Stop running, you coward! Bakugo roared, launching another explosion. Fight me! Use that quirk you stole! Izuku rolled backward, dodging the blast. He used the walls, bouncing off the concrete to keep moving. He was analyzing Bakugo's movements. Right hook. Pivot. Blast. Recovery time, 0.5 seconds. I'm not fighting you, Kaken! Izuku shouted, his voice amplified by his helmet. Fighting you wastes time. Waste time? Bakugo went berserk. You think I'm not worth your time? He charged. He swung a massive right hook. Izuku saw it coming. It was the same move Bakugo always used to start a fight in the playground. Izuku stepped into the guard. He didn't punch. He grabbed Bakugo's wrist with his reinforced gauntlet. He used Bakugo's own momentum. Judo throw, Seinage. Izuku dipped his shoulder and flipped Bakugo over his back. Slam. Bakugo hit the concrete floor hard. The wind was knocked out of him. What? Bakugo wheezed. You always lead with a right hook when you're angry, Izuku said, standing over him. He held a roll of capture tape. I've analyzed your fighting style for 10 years, Kaken. In a notebook, he tried to wrap the tape around Bakugo's leg. Boom! Bakugo blasted the floor, creating a shockwave that threw Izuku back. Bakugo scrambled up, shaking with rage. Don't you look down on me! Bakugo raised his gauntlet. He pulled the pin. Young Bakugo, stop! All Might's voice crackled over the intercom. That move could kill him. He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo screamed. He fired. The blast was massive. It filled the corridor. Fire consumed everything. But Izuku had already calculated the trajectory. Blast radius, confined space. Thermal expansion moves outward. The safest place isn't away, it's up. Izuku jumped. He punched the ceiling, not an attack, but a demolition. He smashed through the drywall and pulled himself into the ventilation shaft/crawl space between floors just as the fire roared beneath him. The smoke cleared. Izuku was gone. Where are you? Bakugo screamed. The objective. On the 5th floor, Uraraka had found the weapon. But Ida had removed everything from the room to clear the floor. Uraraka-kun! Ida cackled, embracing his villain role. I knew you would come. But I have prepared this room to prevent any sneak attacks. Uraraka hid behind a pillar. Ida's really getting into character. Uraraka, Izuku's voice came over the comms. Status? I found the weapon. 5th floor. Ida is guarding it. The room is empty. I can't get close without him seeing me. Where is Bakugo? He's below me. He's destroying the building trying to find me. Okay, Izuku said. I'm coming to you. But I can't use the stairs. Bakugo is guarding them. How are you getting here? Vertically, the ghost strategy. Bakugo was hunting. He stalked the 3rd floor. Come out, Deku! Creak. Above him, Bakugo looked up. There, he blasted the ceiling. Debris fell. But no Deku. Instead, a roll of capture tape dropped down, dangling like a spider's thread. What? Suddenly, the floor beneath Bakugo's feet crumbled. Izuku hadn't been on the floor above. He had been under the floor below, weakening the support beams with precise strikes to the rebar. Bakugo fell. Wah! He crashed down to the 2nd floor. Izuku, emerging from a vent on the 4th floor, sprinted for the stairs. He had bought himself 30 seconds. He reached the 5th floor. Uraraka! Now! Uraraka leaped out. Comet home run! She grabbed a pillar debris, created by Izuku punching through the floor earlier? No, Ida cleared the room. She made herself float. Ida? She flew at him. You cannot defeat my speed! Ida revved his engines. He dodged her easily. Too slow, but that was the distraction. Crash. The floor beneath the weapon exploded. Izuku erupted from the floorboards like a zombie from a grave. He wasn't aiming for Ida. He wasn't aiming for the weapon. He was aiming for the floor the weapon sat on. Smash. Demolition. He pulverized the concrete around the weapon stand. The weapon, a papier-mâché bomb, tipped over. Ida froze. The nuclear core is unstable. Izuku didn't try to touch the weapon. If he touched it, Ida would tackle him. He used his capture tape. He lashed it to the falling weapon. Uraraka! Make it float! Uraraka slapped the tape connecting to the weapon. The bomb became weightless. Izuku yanked the tape. The bomb flew toward him. Ida charged. No, you don't! Izuku didn't fight back. He grabbed the bomb in a bear hug, curled into a ball, and turned his back to Ida. Turtle defense. Ida kicked him. Wham! Izuku grunted as the armored kick slammed into his reinforced back plate. He slid across the room, hitting the wall, but he didn't let go of the bomb. Hero team wins! All Might shouted. Aftermath. The buzzer sounded. Izuku uncurled. He was bruised. His helmet was cracked. But the bomb was safe in his arms. Ida stood there, panting. I failed to protect the asset. Bakugo burst into the room a moment later. He was covered in dust, panting, eyes wild. DKU. He saw Izuku holding the bomb. He saw the winner sign on the screen. I lost? Bakugo whispered. To him? Without him throwing a single punch, he looked at Izuku. Izuku was checking Uraraka for injuries. He wasn't looking at Bakugo with triumph. He wasn't looking at him with superiority. He was looking at him like he was just another hazard that had been successfully mitigated, and that hurt Bakugo more than any punch ever could. Review session. Back in the monitor room, the class was buzzing. That was insane, Kaminari said. Midoriya moves like a Spec Ops soldier. Bakugo was scary, Tsuyu noted. But Midoriya played him like a fiddle. All Might stood at the front. Well, who can tell me who the MVP of this match was? Yaoyorozu raised her hand. It was Ida, she said. Eh? Izuku blinked. Ida adapted to the role best, she explained. Bakugo acted on personal grudges and caused massive property damage. Midoriya, while effective, his plan relied on dangerous structural damage that could have collapsed the building if miscalculated. Uraraka was unfocused. However, Yaoyorozu continued, looking at Izuku. Midoriya's adherence to his rescue philosophy was frighteningly consistent. He completely neutralized Bakugo's combat superiority by refusing to engage in it. He turned a battle into a retrieval mission. Aizawa, leaning against the wall in the corner, smirked. He stopped fighting the enemy, Aizawa muttered to himself, and started fighting the environment. He looked at the boy in the teal jumpsuit, who was currently apologizing to Ida for breaking the floor. Triage, Aizawa thought. He sorted the threats. Bakugo was a red threat, uncontrollable. Ida was a yellow threat. The bomb was the patient. He prioritized the patient. He might just survive this class after all. Izuku looked up and caught Aizawa's eye. The teacher gave a barely perceptible nod. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He was a hero. A weird one. A punchless one. But he was here, and he had saved the day.